Okay. So, so far, like just have a recap. So far, what we have discussed. So, I thought there are some correction. So before just I will recap. So far, we have seen why we need development and then architecture in Salesforce. So we have MVC and multi-tenant architecture in Salesforce, and where are the places we use the Apex. So these are all the places where we have to go for a Apex. We're going to use, and then we have discussed some introduction about the basic that we're going to follow in the classes, I mean Apex classes, and we have discussed some of the primitive data types and non-primitive data types and basic arrays. And there's some more types called like collections, only specific to Apex programming. So that we'll discuss, going to discuss the later. And then coming to yesterday, we have followed what are the naming conventions and how we follow. So the missing part was, so we have seen like what are the different cases, and actually we have missed like what are all the places we have to use which naming conventions. So camel case, Pascal case, kebab, and snake case. So this kebab case and snake case very rarely we use. So most of our programming in Apex, we mostly use camel case and Pascal case. So in short, Pascal case is used while you're naming the your classes. That only for name of the class and name of your Visual Force page, we use the Pascal case. Remaining all like methods, variables, um, we use a camel case. So, and while you are writing the access modifiers, while you're writing access modifiers also, we'll use all small letters like a kebab case. But while using access modifiers, there is no possibility that we're going to have a multiple words. So you always having a single word access modifiers, and we'll use all as a small letters. And while writing a queries, whatever there in the as part of the syntax, like not your fields and what are the exact syntax of the queries, that will be all in the capital letters. And what are the, your queries? It could be like exactly how your field is and all. That will be based on your camel case or a Pascal case. And this naming convention even you can follow while naming your objects and fields also. So there it is allowed a space. So you can use a Pascal case while naming your object and fields or page layouts, wherever it is you follow. So you can follow the Pascal case. So every starting letter of a word can be capital, and when there is a space allowed, so actual name become space, so that space will be filled with the underscore, so that you can follow while naming the as objects or fields. Okay. Okay. So the simple was most often we use camel case and Pascal case. So Pascal case is used while you're naming the components like a class or a Visual Force page. Camel case is used remaining all places like naming a variable, naming a method, or whatever you're naming inside the class is going to be your camel case. Okay. And we have seen access modifiers, and we've seen the sharing, and we have seen implements or extends. Now here, the missing part was when we use implements, when we use extends. So here, we explained the virtual class. So when we have virtual, it is right. When we are overriding, it is where we used. So here, yeah, here it is when we have a virtual class and then some other class want to use the same class to override. It is not the override here. It is extends that has to use to we are going to extend this class, and if we want we're going to override it, or um, otherwise we'll add additional classes. There's not mandatory to override this class, right? So if any of the variable or a method if we want to override, we have to mention that we're going to override the existing. Like this we have to use override the variable. This is how we're going to extend the existing class, and then wherever we're going to override, we're going to use this override method, override keyword. Let's say if it is having a method, so public, let's say it is going to be an integer and addition, and here I would say some number we're going to return. So this is your virtual class method. So in your class, if you want to override this, then what we're going to do is we're going to write the method with the keyword override, override, and then over by this one, addition, and here you're going to have your own number. So when you declare the class and use it, when you use this variable or a method, you're going to whatever you have overridden in this class, that will be that will be returned. Whatever you have overridden. If you are not overridden, whatever the values in this virtual class, that will be used. The concept is correct only, but the syntax is a difference. That is, while you're overriding the inside variables and methods, there we use a override keyword, and when you want to use a virtual class, then we use a extends, and when we use a abstract class, there we use a implements keyword. So when there is an abstract class, and if you're going to extend the sorry implements this abstract, so if you look at the meaning itself, um, so abstract means when we have kind of a copy of this, like when we have a method, or what's the meaning of abstract? This is going to be a structure of your class, how it's going to be, what is the method and variables that you're going to declare, what's the written type, what's the parameter that you are going to declare, but we don't have any functionality in that. So wherever the class that you're going to implement, you have to implement all those things in the abstract class. It's a mandatory. You don't have an option to either use it or not use it. It's not like that. You have to implement that class exactly same, and on top of it, if you want, you can do it. But so that's why it's implementing. So whatever there exactly you have to implement, where in virtual you are extending, you will use this class, so you don't have to again define the methods here. That on top of it, if you want to extend, you can further you can do it. But implements exactly whatever there in the abstract class, you have to implement everything there, and then we can going to continue if we want additionally. That's major part I want to recap here. Oh my, yeah, I'm recording. Cool. Okay, and yeah, this is all like correct only with sharing, without sharing, all we had discussed, which are right. Now we'll see. Yesterday we are seeing the example that we have written the class, and we're discussing about the constructor. So when we having the constructors, so I have different constructors here. Okay, so one is a default constructor. Even though if you write or if I don't write also, it doesn't matter for me. But if I have a different constructor with the different parameters, let's say I am using string as a constructor here, and next one is string and integer is going to be my parameters. Okay, first of all, I will explain what is this thing in the bracket. So what actually it means. Okay, so let's say what actually class was. Class is a bundle of things that are, it is a bundle of its name, variables, and a method or a functions, right? So when and it is a blueprint of an any object. So when we define a blueprint as a class, and then if you want to use this as a structure, then what we're going to do, we'll create a copy of it called a object, and using the object we're going to use the class or use to interact with the other class objects. So here we're fine. Now when you are defining or like when you are um, have a class and you're defining an objects, so you have a structure and you're going to use it. But before I define a class, I mean, before I define an object, how I going to pass the variables to the class? So let's say I have a student information. So take this example. Um, I have student name, student number, and let's say I'm going to add some more variables here. Um, age, and then I would say a string and address. So I have all this three variables I'm going to capture for each student. Okay. So if I want to do it, then what I will do? Um, just I'm going to give you an example where we can write a code for a testing purpose. Let's say. So this is called a. You will go to debug tab, and in the debug tab you have a open anonymous window. There, this is the place where we kind of do a basic testing. That is, whatever there you write in your class and methods and these things, you can write. This is a piece where you can execute your code, like for shorter way, you can say. So you were defining a variable here. So in this anonymous window also you have a variable, and you can write the code directly here, and you can use your classes also in this place. So if you want to execute only few lines of code and you want to see the result, you can use this part of anonymous window, so where you can write the code anonymously and you can execute it. So usually when we have a class, so somewhere we have to use this class to execute. But this is a place where we can execute it. So here, so again, I'm trying to give the navigation. So here, the tab name or menu called debug, and in the debug, you will be having option called open execute anonymous window. So this is a place where we can execute our code like that. So I want to use this a class that is student info. The student info, I'm going to use um, student one. So I'm going to use like a normal constructor or default constructor as a new class name, open close brackets. So do I need to use this one? So what are the different ways of creating an object? Okay. First thing was student one. This is also you can use. But thing was you have declared the variable, but you have not initialized any memory to it. That means so when you have a variable declared, well, the Apex is runtime. So you are defining a variable, right? So when you define a variable, what you will do, you will store some information to this variable, correct? So this is like a custom data type. Why? Because this class is a bundle of few things like variables and all. So this is you are having your own data structure as this class. But if you take any primitive data types, that is string. So string means like student name you want to store. Then what is this is going to be a your data type as a string, and you're going to store the one text or a or a alphanumeric value that you're going to store as part of your programming, a temporary value. Okay, so it will has to allocate some memory um, in your memory. It has to allocate some space in your memory to store the whatever the value that you're going to assign to it. Correct? So that's fine. So when you having this kind of a custom data type called class, so this is where you're declaring the variable and still you have not assigned any space to it. So when the space will be allocated was when you were initialize it. So what is initializing means? Initializing a space in the memory is called initializing. Then only we're going to use it. So here when we declare the variable, it doesn't mean that we're allocating a space to it. Okay, so because when you take the example of primitive data types, they are like a single data type. So you don't have to allocate the memory whenever like you're going to assign the values automatically, it will allocate the memory. But whereas when you're having a custom data types like a class or as object, you have to first um, initialize the variable, then only it will allocate the space, then only you can continue using it. Otherwise, you're going to get a null pointer exception. That is, this value is a null. There is no space allocated to it. And if you're trying to use these values inside the class, then you will get a null pointer exception. So remember, whenever you're having a custom data types like a class variables or S object, you have to initialize them. Then only sorry, then only you can utilize the variables, otherwise you will get a null pointer exception. That's usually a common exception you will get while you are in the initial stages of your programming. So make sure when you're having this class or custom data types, you have to assign a space to it, then only you can, or like we call it as initializing the variable, then only you can start utilizing that variable. Okay, so now we have initialized um, the above one, that is student one. Then we're going to um, assign the values to it, like whatever we have here, student name. Then I will add some names here, and then so I'm not assigning all the values. Okay, I am just trying to debug what is the value in this student one. Let's say I'm writing and student one and plus I'm going to use whatever there in the student when I want to read. Okay, so this is what my piece of code. So here, if you see, there are two options here: execute and execute highlighted, and check and uncheck the open log box. So when we are trying to execute, there are two options. Either you can execute all the code that is in the anonymous window, or you want to execute only the selected part of the code. So if you want to execute selected part of a code, you have to use the execute highlighted. If you want to execute everything, you can use the execute button. And whatever the button you used, if you want to immediately open the log, you can use the checkbox. And if you forgot or if you are not check this box, no log will open. Then how I can open that log is, so here you see, right? There's a tab, you see problems, progress, view state and all. There you see a tab called logs. So here in the log file, you will be generated the logs over here. Okay. First of all, I'm not checking this box and I'm trying to execute this code and nothing is happened over here. But if you see in the bottom, you have seen the log is generated. When I do a double click, it will open a log for me. So this is all the how the log is created, and it will give execute anonymous apex, student info, true or false, variable scope. So you can see order like how it is being executed. Code unit started, variable scope began, and heap allocation. This is all how it is being executed. You can see everything here. So here in the log at the end also you can see some of the governor limits and how far you have utilized. You can see is the transaction happened, and in this transaction the number of SOQL queries allowed are 100. You have used only 0, and query rows is 50,000. You have used 0. SOSL you have 20. You have utilized 0. DML statements you have 150, and we have not written any DML statements. Similarly, we have everything over here. So these are the limits, the basic governor limits, and what is your utilization you can see at the end of the log. Okay. Now I don't want to see all this. I want to see my debug. What happened to my debug? Do you see the debug that we have added here? So here you see, right? Print student and student info. So this is what address is null, age is null, roll number is null, but only have a student name. Okay. I want to see only the debug values. So you have option to see here only debug, only the option called the checkboxes over here. Once you check this box, you'll only see that whatever you have added debugs to your code, only that value will be displayed over here when you check this box. Okay. Now I want to see how if I not initialized it. Okay. So what I will do was, so I will remove this initialization. Just I have a value. Okay, I have not initialized it. And if I try to execute, all my expectation is I will get an exception saying a null pointer exception. Let's see. Um, Execute. See here, I'm getting a null pointer exception in the line number 3. Attempt to dereference a null object. Okay, have you observed? So in the line number 3, so here without initializing a space, I was trying to use the value. So I'm getting a null pointer exception. Okay. So let's see how the value to it, how if I print the value, what it will print. Let's see. And then here I will add, I will initialize over here, new class name and a constructor. Please let me know if you're not following at any point of time. Okay, I will try to. So I'm trying to execute. Okay, so now I don't have any exception because I have initialized it, then only I was using. But I have added a debug log before initializing and after initializing. Let me see what are the debug logs I have. So if you look at here, so before initializing, I it is saying it is a null value. After initializing, it allocated a space. It allocated a space for student info, and the inside values are null. So I have not utilized the address, what it is, and what is the age. I have not initialized what is the roll number. I have not used, but only the student name I'm having the value. Okay, if I want to use, what I will do here, here, if I want to use, just I will use all the names over here. So I have age is the integer. If I use a string, let's see what will happen. And I have roll number. This is also integer. Let's see what will happen. And I have a address. Addresses I'm going to give it a what I'm going to have the address, and age should be without a single quote. Single quotes is it's a text value, but age is a integer and roll number is also integer. So let's say I'm just giving, for example, I'm using a wrong context over here. Let's see what will happen if I use like this. Okay, and I'm here, I'm checking the open log so that I can see my log once immediately I run it. Okay, so here it's saying a illegal assignment from string to a integer. That means you are assigning a string value to the integer variable. That means you have to check that you are assigning the wrong thing to the your integer variable. So here I'm changing this text format to a number format. Okay, again I have one more thing actually. Let's execute and see. Here it's giving a line number. I'm having this illegal assignment. So in the line number 9, again I'm going to change this text to a number, then trying to execute, then it executed fine, and it automatically open the log for me, whatever the log is created. Okay, then cool. I see. Now I see values to the all variables. Now, now coming to the point. So I cannot, so whenever I'm going to create a new student, I don't want to do it in a 4 lines of code. I want to initialize the values while I'm initializing the space itself. I want to initialize it. Then what I'm going to do was I'm going to have a constructors, different constructors where I can pass the data to this class. What is the passing? So what we are doing, what the class, we are using it as a structure, data structure, and we are trying to allocate the space to it. And in the space, we are going to use that space for storing the text and numerical values. And what all we're trying to do was we're trying to use these variables as a together one. Still, it is a text value only. Even if you use here or here, it's going to be the same. But here the values are coming as a bundle, and the same values you can declare as a separate values also you can create. But all the advantage here was you having the variables as a bundle as a together values, so that you can have like when you're having multiple students, then you can think like what variable belongs to which student. So you're having a bundle variable here. Okay, fine. But all I was looking at now was, instead of having this thing and at initializing this the space itself, I want to allocate the values so that it will be easy for me to, instead of using a multiple lines to assign the values, I can use the same constructor to assign the values. To assign the values in the construct or directly in the class value defining a object itself, we use a constructors, where in the constructor we can have an option to pass the data from when you're declaring the space, when you're declaring the object and allocating the space, there itself we will pass the variables, and whatever the data that you have passed in the constructor, you have to use that parameter to assign the values. Otherwise, it's of no use. Let us see. how what is the passing and what is assigning. So before we doing that, I want to tell you like there are two ways of commenting the code. So if you want to comment a single line, if you're observing the color over here, if you use two forward slashes, see here, the color has been changed. That means you have commented this code. That means this code is not being used. Okay. And the other part is how to comment the multiple lines. So here, if you want to comment multiple lines, we are going to use the start of the comment line is a forward slash and a star, and end of the comments would be a star followed by the forward slash. This is how we comment a multiple lines. Okay, so um, let's say I'm going to comment this next constructor, and here this one I'm going to use a constructor. So here I want to remove this for now. So I'm not assigning any value to it. Okay. And I want to go to anonymous window. Here, just I'm commenting all these lines over here. Okay. Here instead of null. So I have now one more constructor, right? Saying passing the name. So I will pass this name as part of this constructor. I'm passing the parameter, but I'm not assigning the value to the any variable in the class. So there's no difference actually. Let's see. So whether it's a difference or not. I'm trying to debug. See, all values are null only. It is not being assigned. Even though you are passing the parameter, only it will be useful when you assign the value to it. So you see, so now I'm assigning this whatever the parameter that we have passed, the value, whatever you pass, it will be assigned to a student name. Okay, I'm saving the class, and again I'm trying. So if I execute the same thing, right? So here you have option to execute the last, whatever you executed last time, you can execute using the execute last. Okay, I'm executing it from here itself. I have a log. Now I'm expecting a ROM value has been stored in that type. See here, now it is being stored. Okay, now I have one more constructor taking a two parameters. One is a student name, one is a roll number. Okay, so I'm just storing it, and in the debug, along with student, I'm going to you pass the roll number as well. Okay, and trying to execute it. Now I was expecting the two values get assigned in my class variable. Okay, see here, roll number and a student name. If in case by mistake, if you're trying to assign this roll number to age, okay, so what will happen? So even though your intention is to pass to a roll number, but you're assigning it to a age, what will happen? It will assign to the age only. Why? Because it is not the programming fault. It's your fault that you're doing the assignment wrongly. Okay. So now see the value, the roll number is assigned